Hey guys, what's up? What it do? Back with another episode, actually the first episode of a new series, and it's called SSS Truth. Alright, so basically let's go over a quick overview on why the series is called SSS Truth and what the series is going to pertain to. Alright, so SSS Truth stands for Sanctuary, Sabbath, and State of the Dead Truth. And the reason that this series is going to focus on those three main topics is because just as a general overview on what the series is going to be about, episode 1 is going to be about the Sabbath, but before we get into the Sabbath, here's a general overview on what the whole series is going to be about and why it's these three topics. So, in Genesis chapter 3 and verse 4 and 5 in the King James Version of the Bible, we read, and quote, "And the serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die, for God does know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil." What's the reason SSS Truth is going to focus on sanctuary, the state of the dead, and the Sabbath? It's because these are the first lies that were told by the serpent in the Garden of Eden. God said, if you eat of this fruit, you shall surely die. The serpent said, aka the devil, serpent, same thing. The devil said, ye shall not certainly die. That's the first lie the devil told. The next lie that the serpent told Eve was that you shall be as God, knowing good and evil. Now that one pertains to the sanctuary, talking about how you can basically be your own judge of your own morality. You don't need God's laws, right? You don't need God's system of worship. You can do your own system of worship. You can make up your own laws. You can have your own morality. You shall be as God, knowing good and evil. All right, that's the second lie of the devil. And the next lie goes back into talking about the commandments, which again, serpent said you don't need God's commandments. You can make up your own commandment. Now, the fourth commandment says that you should worship God on the seventh day, which is Saturday, right? Man said you can worship me on the first day, which is Sunday. So that goes back to the third lie. All of these lies can be found in Genesis. If you go to Genesis chapter 2 and verse 1, you see that God says that he actually created the world in 6 days. And on the seventh day, I'm going to read Genesis chapter 2, verse 1 and 2. And it reads, "Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the hosts of them. And on the seventh day, God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made." All right, boom, there you go. So that's the third lie right there, and the one that we're going to focus on right now. God said the seventh day is the Sabbath. The Pope, via Constantine, back in 320 AD, long time ago, said that actually we're going to have the Christians worship on Sunday, which is the first day of the week. And again, this goes back to the devil telling you can worship God on what day you feel like worshiping him. You can worship God how you want to worship him. You don't have to follow my commandments. You can make up your own rules, do your own thing. And that's why we're focusing on these three topics, because these three lies are basically, they lead in and they split off into all kinds of other lies that the devil has told over the years. And if you get these first three lies down, all of those other smaller lies will kind of fall aside once you have the main truth on these three topics: the Sabbath truth, the sanctuary truth, and the state. If you read in Ecclesiastes chapter 9 and verse 5, you see that Prophet Solomon says that, "For the living know that they shall die, but the dead know not anything. Neither have they any more reward, for the memory of them is forgotten." So the dead know nothing, right? Your grandma is not in heaven right now, or in hell right now, living, burning for 1,000,000 trillion years, or, coming to you and talking to you in your room. And if you see your grandma talking to you, that's a demon. That's not really your grandma, because the dead know nothing, right? Once you die, it's like you are asleep. You know nothing. Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 10 says, whatsoever thy hand findest to do, do it with thy might, for there is no work, nor device, nor knowledge nor wisdom in the grave whither thou goest. So there's no knowledge in the grave, there's no device in the grave. Once you die, boom, that's lights out. You fall asleep until the resurrection, when Jesus wakes up everybody from the dead, and you either go, at that point, you go to heaven, if you're in the first resurrection, or if you're in the second resurrection, that means you missed the boat and you're in the resurrection of the fallen dead, and that means you're going to hell at that point. And hell is not an eternal fire. Hell basically means you're separated from God and you go into eternal nothingness. You burn for a period of time and then you cease to exist. You're not. Because think about it, if you were burning for all eternity, that would make you immortal, right? Because if I go into a pit of fire right now, I'll burn up and I'll die, right? For me to keep burning forever and ever, I would have to be immortal. For me to keep burning it without dying, right? So if you go into a fire with your body, you would burn up and you would die. That's what hell is basically. You burn up and you die, but you don't come back from that. That's it forever. You know, it's not an eternal burning, because that really wouldn't be fair. Like, let's say you lived for 70 to 100 years of pure sin. You know, you're the worst Hitler that ever existed for 70 years of evil. Now you got to burn for all of eternity for 70 years worth of evil. That's not really fair. But God is a God of fairness. God is a God of justice. So if you decide that you don't want to spend eternity with God in heaven, then God is not going to force you to spend eternity with him in heaven. You've made your decision that you hate God. You don't want to spend time with God in heaven. You don't want to be in heaven. You don't want anything to do with God. He's not going to force you to spend eternity with him in heaven, because that would be hell for you, because you decided that you don't want anything to do with righteousness. You don't want anything to do with perfection. You don't want anything to do with glory or justness or peace or harmony. So you have actually chosen hell for yourself. You've chosen to disconnect yourself from God. God never walks away from you. It's actually we that make the decision to walk away from God, because we are the ones who choose that we don't want to be with God and live according to God's law. And so God says, I'm not going to force you to do what you don't want to do. Whew! All right, so that was a bit of a long intro, right? So let's actually get into the topic of episode 1, which is the Sabbath truth. SSS Volume 1, episode 1, the Sabbath. Now, most people think that the Sabbath is Sunday, but actually, you know, as we said, we're going back to the beginning. Let's go back to Genesis. What does Genesis say the Sabbath is? Let's read it again. We read this earlier, but let's read it again. Genesis chapter 2, verse 2. And on the seventh day, God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he made. Verse 3. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and he made. So, boom, we see from the Bible that the seventh day is a Sabbath. Now, if you look at your calendar, any calendar except the new modern ones where they changed it to make Sunday the seventh day somehow, all the calendars for all the time, Sunday is the first day. Sunday is day number 1, making Saturday the seventh day of the week. So the seventh day, Saturday, would be the Sabbath, biblically speaking. There's nowhere in the whole Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, that you can find where God said, okay, I am changing the Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday. In fact, the Jews, the white Jews, the people down in Israel calling themselves the Jews, that's a whole nother story. The people who are religiously Jews, not saying that those are the actual descendants from Abraham, but the people who are religiously Jews right now, living in Israel, they worship on Saturday. Because you know what? For the last 1,000+ years, those people have been keeping the Sabbath, and the Sabbath, according to the Bible, is Saturday. And if you go all the way back to Genesis, all the way back to Adam, right? The people who serve the Creator God, the true God, have always kept Saturday holy. Adam, Eve, their children, Seth, Noah, Methuselah, Enoch, all of these people have kept Saturday, the seventh day of the week, holy. It was actually the pagans who kept Sunday holy. Sunday is the day of the sun. That's why it's called Sun Day. It's a day that the pagans worshipped the false god, the sun god. The sun god has been called Ra. The sun god has been called Osiris. The sun god has been called Zeus. The sun god has been called Jupiter. Many different years for the same sun god, but the true God of the heaven is the Creator, and he said to worship on Saturday, and that's why Saturday is a true Sabbath of the Lord God, according to the Bible. So it's a question of authority. Are you going to do what God said to do or what man said to do?